I find this topic pretty difficult to talk about because it's interesting how we put men and women into two different archetypes and then we assign an ideology to both of them, masculinity and femininity. And we try very hard to uphold a standard of what is true feminine and what is true masculine. But I think both archetypes can be pushed to an extreme. And no matter if you're masculine or feminine, you're still human. And for me, the archetype of a human is a being with choice, a being who can choose to be an angel, a devil, a saint, a nemesis. Like, you as a human being were given this free will to think and to understand and to choose who you want to be. So when we talk about archetypes of masculine and feminine, it can get a bit complicated because let's say you were born as a boy, but you grew up liking fashion and makeup, for example. But society as it stands defines fashion and makeup as feminine. But it wasn't always that way. It was defined as something completely different back when men were wearing it, back when everyone was wearing it in ancient Egypt. So society you're in kind of defines the archetype of masculine and feminine. It's hard to say what is true masculine and true feminine because it's also biased. It's also subjective. If I was to define masculine as strong, go-getter, someone who takes the lead, then does that diminish a woman who doesn't want to be fit into the archetype of masculine? Are women not strong, able to lead, go-getters? So I find this archetype a bit, archaic in this modern age. I think it was mainly used to control society and to have people fit into various boxes. Humans can't live without a label. We are very attached to the idea of a thing. And we fight all the time when an idea doesn't, agree with ours. And I can see how that can be useful sometimes when you want to find an essential truth of a topic. But what happens is we identify with the idea instead of using the idea to come closer to a truth. And once you identify with an idea, you become further from the truth because then you develop an ego. And what basically an ego is an identity that's not your true self. That's all it is. It's an identity that you adapted. But you, your true self, are the observer of this universe. You're not the label, for example. We like to put ourselves as like, okay, I am the son of this person, I am this race, and I am this nationality. But these are all just labels. Your true essence, you're just a human being observing the universe. You're like a pure light, pure soul, always present, always there, connected to everything else. And we adopt these identities that we call egos. Now, the archetype of masculine and the archetype of feminine, it's not to say like there's no truth to that. It's just that when we identify too strongly, the truth kind of fades into the background because there are differences between men and women, and we have to accept those. Men usually have stronger upper body strength. But a fun fact about long distance running is that the men and the women kind of compete for the same time in certain areas. Not all sports. Some sports, like long distance running, for example, you can find women usually keeping up with men. But let's say if it was a sport like wrestling, for example, of course men would kind of dominate in that sport, or like javelin throwing. Like, there are differences between the genders. And I think acknowledging the physical differences between them is always a step closer to reality, but it becomes a bit complicated when you try to shape their personality to fit a societal archetype. So when you talk about masculine essence and feminine essence and, divine masculine and divine feminine, these things exist in technically both genders. It's just that the male archetype, the male shape, the male figure, the male physicality holds a bit more of what you would call a masculine essence. So, for example, males are more, angular than females. They're not as curvy. And that signifies a bit more structure, a bit more rigidity, which is true. If you look at society today, you will see that usually, you will find women are more accepting and in tune with their emotional being because they're more close to flow because of their curved nature. Masculine are a bit more rigid. We like principles, solid principles, can be very black and white sometimes. Not the easiest to budge sometimes, but again, these are very loose terms when it comes to masculine and feminine, because if you go through an era, you will find that different eras in history, the balance of the masculinity and the femininity kind of shifts a bit. So you might find in one era where the men are actually a bit more feminine, a bit more softer, a bit more, flowy. So it's not to say the energies are set and this is how it is permanently. It's a spectrum. And life is always a spectrum for the human being because we're given choice. And I need to make that really clear. We are given choice. We have teeth that can bite vegetation, to bite meat. We can digest both. At the end of the day, the human being is given a choice. What we like to do is put morality to that choice and say this is better than that choice and try to fight other humans on the choices we make. But again, once you do that, you kind of dilute the truth, the essence of this reality, because you become identified with an ideology. If you want to be freer as a human being, then you have to separate yourself from the ideology or labels that society has given you. Only then can you choose for yourself. Because a lot of us, we've taken the labels that our parents have given us, our country has given us, and we've molded it into our ego. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. That's just how you were brought up. That's natural. As children, we absorb whatever is around us. But to be an evolved being, to go into the next era of, I would say, humanity, the ability to discern certain dogmas and certain principles, to separate yourself from those ideologies, from your true nature, I think will help us be in a less of a conflict with each other, to be more at peace with each other. Because what happens with strong identities is that they're always fighting to defend itself. The ego always wants to defend itself. So in this current era, there's a pushback against strong ideologies. You see it with the gay community, the LGBTQ. That's a natural type of evolution of when you constrain something so much, it bursts. And we've done that to humanity. We've put such a strong label on it. And both men and women are suffering from it. A lot of people like to say, the patriarchy. But the patriarchy is suffering under itself. Males are suffering under the patriarchy as well. And it's to get to a point of balance, it can no longer be masculine versus feminine or male versus female. It has to be a state of deep awareness that these ideologies are just identities that we adopt. I'm not saying that there's not a natural inclination for males to do things a bit differently to females. There is. But you can't take away the fact that you are the observer. And yes, your body, this vessel that we have, might have cravings, might have, tendencies, because it is a generational thing. You will adopt things through your generational line. It's all energy and it always changes, never disappears. But to become aware of it, that is where healing and transformation begins. Maybe I'm just saying this because I want to find peace within myself and peace within the archetype that society has given me as a male. There are certain things I like that I don't know if I should like. And we kind of define men strongly on their sexuality if they like anything that is not considered masculine, which is fascinating. So there's a time on my phone where I was scrolling Instagram and I saw nail videos, women painting nails. And I was like, this is really pretty. And then it just ended up with a whole bunch of nail videos because I kept liking them because I really enjoy the content. But society would look at that males don't enjoy colorful nails. Why would they? But it's like any other pretty thing, anything that's beautiful. You can recognize beauty no matter if you're male or female. But the fact that you have to maintain your archetype so strongly and fight for it if you don't want to be ridiculed says something about the stronghold of ideology and archetypes in our society currently. And it's pretty sad. But I will say though, it has gotten better. I know we like to complain a lot about society and where it's at and, the violence, the strong patriarchy. But throughout history, I can honestly say we're in a pretty good time. Even though climate change is kind of threatening to wipe us all out right now, we're in a pretty good time. It's not like our history was really bright. Human history is dark. We have gotten better. There are not as many genocides these days. There's still some. You know what I'm talking about. But we've gotten a lot better. We're not as warmongering as we used to be. We're not as savage as we used to be. We've gotten a lot more polite. And to a toxic point, I will talk about toxic empathy another day, where humans have become so, detached from the natural order of things that animals being animals to each other is seen as disturbing. We've come a bit too far left. Gotta come back to center. But I think this whole discussion about archetypes for me personally is accepting myself and separating from the archetype of masculinity, because society uses it as a way to control. It's a way to keep males in line. And I'm not sure the reason as to why that is. You know what? I'm not going to blame it on capitalism this time. Though I really want to. I'll just leave that as that. But yes, the archetypes of masculine and feminine, they're usually societal based. And you as a human being, you have both energies within you, masculine and feminine. You can choose to do whatever you like. Just know that your activities do not determine if you're masculine or if you're feminine. These archetypes were given to us mainly as a form of acceptance, and acceptance is control, if you think about it carefully. To fall in line is to be under control of something. And we fall in line because we want to be accepted. We are afraid of being outcast from the tribe. And for me, I understand this very well. I like to look at pretty nails. I like makeup and shit. Like all these things. I like pretty things. I like beautiful things. And I don't know why it's necessary to defend your sexuality based on the things you like. Because my wife would tell you, I'm a very straight man. My like of pretty things has nothing to do with my sexuality at all. And even if it did, I don't even think that would be an issue. But we have to break away from the archetypes that we've been fed in order to find that true essence of what we're here for and who we are. This video is longer than I want it to be. And I always come in front of the camera and I don't know what to say. Until I start talking, I never realize how long these videos are. But yes, this is just my daily journal. And what came to mind today was masculinity and femininity, and how these archetypes kind of trap us into these weird boxes that we find it hard to escape from. But if you're a man, if you're a woman, you have choice, and your choices are solely yours, and they do not reflect if you're too masculine, if you're too feminine, and if that's a good or a bad thing based on your gender. But that's it for today. If you like my content, please leave a like. If you want to see more from me, subscribe to my channel and leave a comment. Tell me what you feel about being masculine or feminine, how that affects your life. Are you afraid to be yourself because you're afraid of being judged for being too masculine or too feminine? Let me know in the comments. Have an awesome day.